My name is John Burris, and thank you for visiting me to watch this short video today called Fascia and Emotions. In this video, I'll be sharing with you some dynamic ways to see the body in a whole new way. I'll be exploring what I call new anatomy with you, how it's much different than what's called old anatomy, which is perhaps hundreds and hundreds of years old. In this video, I'll be sharing you with how the emotions of the body get stuck in the fascia tissue and how in random events that emotion might come out, and how many of our illnesses are based on the fact that our fascia becomes a holding pattern for old emotions that never were released. So I'll show you ways to release them, show you what happens when they get stuck in your body, and show you a whole new dynamic way to envision the body. So let's first talk about what is an emotion. Emotion is a very important part of our existence. Every emotion has a purpose. I know that sounds crazy in a world where we live in our heads, for example, but every emotion has a specific purpose. For example, when you're defending a boundary, you're supposed to get angry. When somebody's trying to steal something from you, you're supposed to get angry. That excites your body to defend yourself. When something happens where you have a loss, we call that grief. It could be a death of an animal, it could be a death of a parent or a family member or a friend. That's called grief. We're supposed to grieve. Grieving doesn't just happen from your head, it's supposed to happen for your entire body. So all these different ranges of emotions, from joy to sadness to grief to anger, they all have a purpose. And what happens is we repress them, we push them down inside, we store them in our body, and it's stored in the fascia tissue when we don't let them out. So any emotion that doesn't go out gets stuck in somewhere, in your throat, in your heart, in your lungs, between your eyes, and your back, your neck. So emotion means energy in motion. Emotions are supposed to flow. But what happens in our culture, we develop these rules that come from our higher thinking brain. Big boys don't cry. Good girls don't get angry. Only weak, vulnerable people express their emotions. Those are unnatural rules, and they end up causing harm to our bodies in the long run. Because once that energy of emotion doesn't flow out, it gets stuck inside, causing all kinds of havoc in our physical tissues. The fascia is the place where often the emotions are stored. It becomes a dumping ground for that. So we'll explore that here in a minute. The next part is to explore what is fascia. The way I equate fascia, it's like the white stuff in an orange. It encases all the, well, if it was a muscle, it'd be, the orange stuff would be the muscle and the white stuff would be the fascia. It keeps us together. It compartmentalizes everything. It holds us up. It goes from the tips of your toes all the way through your organs and glands. It wraps around your bones, goes to the top of your head, through your brain. So fascia goes everywhere in the body. And it's a part of our connective tissue. It's a water-based material that when it dries out, and there's lots of reasons it's dried out. If you haven't watched my videos on what is fascia, you might want to go back and watch those. So when the fascia dries out, it causes all kinds of problems in the body. So essentially, fascia is the material that holds us together and it compartmentalizes all of us. Just like the white stuff in an orange. Another way to envision fascia is to be like saran wrap to the body. These white fibers running everywhere and holding us up and holding us together. And it's basically, it's this fine fiber that runs everywhere throughout the entire body. So what's happened is, in the hundreds of thousands of years of anatomy study, most anatomists, scientists, medical doctors have essentially missed the importance of fascia. Yeah, they cut it open when they do surgery and they cut open dead bodies, they see it's there, but they don't understand the importance of it. It's cut, it's cauterized, it's burned, it's removed. In the medical community, fascia is considered the waste product of the body. They get to it, cut it out, throw it away on a tray because they want to get to the brain or the heart or other organs. So I'm going to show you how ill-conceived that idea is, because fascia is probably the most important part of our entire body, and the scientific community has basically missed it. So most of my first part of my life I spent in the fitness world. I trained hard, I worked hard, I went to the gym, I lifted weights, I ran, I played sports, I strengthened, hardened my body. And unfortunately, it never really fixed any of my injuries. It just made them worse over time, and it made my body harder and stiffer. So in my early 30s, I began the yoga journey. And that journey was quite different because I wasn't trying to harden my body. I was trying to lengthen, loosen, open the layers of my body. The body is a series of layers and tubes. So in my next chapter of my life, I started to expand and open my layers and tubes of my body. But a lot of interesting things began to happen. And one of them was when my first early yoga trainings and early yoga classes, I would start crying in the middle of the class. I'd be in a pose, a back bend, a hip opener, and all of a sudden just deep sobs coming through me. And the teacher didn't know necessarily how to handle that. You know, most yoga teachers are not trained to handle emotional experiences when a student has them come forth because they don't understand the body-mind concept. As a body-mind therapist, I'm well trained to understand how that works. So I have these deep sobbing experiences and feel wonderful afterwards as I release all these layers and layers and layers of grief and pain and hurt that was stored in my body. And I was confused at first because I didn't really know where it was coming from. And that was just the beginning, because when I would get bodywork treatments, some days I would get more grief coming out and tears coming out. When I finally became a yoga teacher, I witnessed the same things. I'd have students in class in either a back bend or hip opening pose or certain poses, and just the sobs coming out, the sobs coming out. Now, I never saw that in a gym unless somebody tore a bicep or dropped a 100-pound weight on their toe. There was no sobs coming into the 24-hour gym. But in the yoga classes, it became normal when I started teaching how students would all of a sudden become tears in their eyes, sobbing, crying, and whatnot. And then in my 40-year career as a body worker, a fascia body worker, and massage therapist, I witnessed the same thing. I'd be working on a client's neck and all of a sudden deep sobbing coming, or even shaking and reliving a memory and a trauma, or working on a frozen shoulder, all of a sudden the tears coming out and the client not knowing where that came from. They said they'd been to therapy, they did all their homework, and all of a sudden their body was releasing tons and tons of emotion. So what I came to conclude is that the fascia in the body is a storehouse for old pain, old memories, old hurts and wounds that we never really let out. And you can have a spontaneous release someday and not know where it's coming from, because your body has been a sponge collecting all that emotion that's never been released. So it's a fascinating journey to watch how the fascia and the emotional world are all connected together here. What I came to realize is that the body is organized as a series of tubes and layers. It's a work that was first presented to me by Stanley Kellerman in his work Emotional Anatomy. In the layers and tubes, the body stores our old memories, either on the surface or in deep pockets inside. Sometimes the surface layer feels fine, and people look healthy on the outside, but their pain, their emotions, their trauma are stored multiple layers deep. So here's an example. Here's how the layering system works in my work. So there's a paper towel, and all the body tissues are like a tree rings. And so you might have a wound here that goes from the outside several layers deep. And it's visible. It could be a painful place, and it could be basically it's emotion, pain. We call that an energy cyst in the fascia bodywork world, where it goes several layers deep in these layers and layers and layers of fascia tissue in the body. So as a fascia body worker, what I do is I strip away layer by layer by layer until we release it and get it out. And that may take a little while to get all those layers peeled away. But the emotion starts coming out as the energy is released, because emotions are forms of energy. So that's released. In some other cases, though, somebody's emotional wound might be several layers deep, and it's protected on the outside. So this is another example here how that wound might be decades old, and it's buried underneath tissue that's on the outside, like tree rings. Where in a tree ring you can see, 30 years ago there was a drought because the tree ring shows you, or 40 years ago there was a volcanic activity because it shows you ash in there. Well, our emotional experiences are often buried in the layers of our body. And when you start doing yoga and expansive movement and fascia body work, you start peeling away these layers, peeling them away, and you start to release the energy of emotion that's stuck in the body. Now, this is quite different than gym workouts, because in gym workouts, we're putting layers on top. We're building armor. We're armoring our body to not feel. It's a warrior approach, because aren't athletes warriors? Warriors don't want to feel anything, so they deaden their bodies with more layers of hardening armor, so that all emotional wounds are buried. So when somebody says, well, I have a high pain tolerance, what they're telling you is I've just deadened my body to feeling. I've eliminated all feeling from my body and deadened it. So my first years in the fitness world, that's what I did. When I started going into the yoga world, I started peeling away my layers and exposing my old wounds that were stuck in my body, and there were many. And as I work with yoga students and yoga clients, I see sometimes that you're in a yoga class for 4 or 5 years. Before you get to the wound, you peeled away enough layers, and finally the wound starts to show up, and the grief or the pain or the hurt starts to be exposed. So it could be an old wound, for example, a car accident stuck in your neck 20 years ago. It could be an emotional abuse happening in your childhood with a family member. It could be anything where the emotion is still stuck in your body. The yoga experience, the fascia body work are two of the wonderful, great ways to start releasing it. And if you do some kind of physical therapy or therapy, talk therapy, you can often find out what that actually is and where it came from. There are several scientists who studied this topic years ago. One was James L Ashman in Energy Medicine and Therapeutic and Human Performance. And he believes that fascia is the pathway by which the energy stream of chi flows. And he was one of the first in the science field to uphold the importance of fascia as something more than just waste material. So he believed the energy was stored in the fascia, and I'm just adding to it, that energy is also emotional energy. Another scientist who explored the topic in the 1960s was Dr. Robert Becker in The Body Electric. And he believed that while stretching the fascia, you're creating a polarization effect of the positive and negative poles that generated a piezoelectric experience, and an electric current was discharged, and this corresponds to the qi in the body according to Chinese medicine. So my addition to that is it also exposes the emotional holding pattern stuck in the body when you start to activate the fascia tissue in a certain way. Another scientist involved in this type of work was Dr. Hiroshi Motoyama, and he believed that the fascia network was an intelligent form of communication. Well, are our emotions a form of communication? So when you're doing fascia body work or yoga over a long time, you're breaking apart the crystallization that's stuck in the fascia, and that could be why often the energy and the emotions start to be released. Here's a picture of the classic Western hard body. When you have a hard body, you're deadening your body, your fascia gets hard and dried out, and you're diminishing the energy flow. And you're keeping any emotion stuck inside. If the emotions are a form of energy, you're blocking the energy pathways and you're causing a storage of energy emotion. So remember, our body is a sponge and it holds all the stories of our life. When you harden your body, you are not releasing, but you're condemning those emotions to get stuck in your body forever. And here's where I make a big distinction. Here's a woman doing a yoga pose. She isn't just standing there with her arm in the air. She's stretching her fascia tissue. Yes, her muscles are getting to work out, and that's important too, but all the surrounding tissue, the fascia, is breaking apart. She's elongating her joints, and those adhesions are breaking down, allowing the chi and the energy to flow, and that often is where the emotional release happens. So this is quite different than the fitness approach. And this picture comes to us from a concept by Thomas Myers, who wrote a book called Anatomy Trains. He saw the body as a series of what's called train tracks, or all these lines of fascia running the body. This is called the front line. And when you stretch this front line, like in yoga, you're stretching through your heart and your lungs and many of your glands and your neck, and you're opening up all the tissues. Now, the heart and lungs are not just benign organs. They carry emotion. And when you stretch through them, you're creating a release of that emotion that's stuck in the body. So this is really important stuff. And here's two contrasting belief systems. On the left side is the fitness world trying to harden, shorten, and contain all the energy in the body. And on the other side is the yoga energy healing model, where we're trying to expand and open all the energy flow. So that's the big distinction here. The left side is deadening the body. The right side is expanding the body, creating more feeling, more energy, and you open up the heart and lungs as well. Here's a person doing a yoga back bend where all their tubes and layers are stretching, and you're expanding and you open up all those pockets that might be carrying energy and emotion stuck inside. One of my most profound experiences practicing yoga and teaching yoga is when people get into back bends. They really experience deep emotions of letting go of mistrust, letting go of the fear of falling. And all those emotions start to flow out of the body. So back bends are one of the areas, but you can also find deep emotion while stretching painful hips or painful groin muscles. Here's a picture of an advanced yoga back bend. This is one of the places where people feel deep, deep emotion flowing through them. Now this takes a long time to get here. This is not an easy pose. There are simple back bends for beginners and intermediate students. This is more an advanced pose. But in a pose like this, you're stretching not just the front line of the body, but all the tubes and layers of fascia that might be holding emotional restrictions, trauma, and pain that might be stored in all the body parts. So this is one way to get everything to start flowing again. So as we can see, we're not just arms and legs and torso, where there's so much more to us. Your emotions are often stuck in your body from places that you haven't let go of. The body has become a sponge for what we call energy cysts that are stuck inside. But there's hope, there's ways to get them out for freedom. Not just pain-free, but releasing the energy stored. And so first you have to make your fascia important. You have to recognize that fascia is the holding and the sponge of the body, and it carries all the unfinished business. Then you have to create the right kind of movements, make the right choices. So one way is fascia body work. I use my hands on a client and start to stretch all the fascia, and it starts to release patterns. Now, it's not always easy or simple. It's not an instant fix either. It might take weeks, months, or years to get to that point. Your fascia is an intelligent organ of communication. It's an intelligent organ of energy flow, and it's an intelligent organ of emotion. And we need to make that important. The other way that I did over the years is 35 years of practicing yoga, going through those painful areas, releasing the tension in the body, finding those pockets that were stuck of old traumas, car accidents, bicycle accidents, sporting injuries, head injuries, and all the other parts that were stuck, the emotional parts where I never released old wounds from relationships and losses that I never let go of. So it's all there. I've worked on clients before, I'd be working across their chest, and all the sobs of grief started coming out from unprocessed grief. I worked on their clients, and their throat and shoulder was all about the emotion from the past abuses. So it's really important. My work is with fascia body work, and with yoga, there's other ways you can do it, but those are the best ways that I found to do that. Thank you for visiting me here and watching this short video called Fascia and Emotions. I hope that sheds some light on these leading edge ideas about how our body is really different than what we've been taught in normal anatomy. If you'd like to know more about me, please visit my website at johnburris.com, or you can subscribe to this channel and you'll be contacted by the next leading edge video. Thank you.